Hi, this is Patrick from J&P Cycles, and today we're going to talk a little bit about your braking system. This is going to be kind of a high-level look of all things braking. And unfortunately, especially in cruiser land and Harley-Davidson land, sometimes brakes are the last things addressed or the last things thought of on a motorcycle, when in reality it could be your most important, upgrade. I mean, a lot of guys will very quickly spend, hundreds if not thousands of dollars on a paint job, but leave the stock braking system alone on a really expensive bike. And I'm willing to bet that if you're mid-corner getting ready to tag a deer, you'd trade that paint job for $400 at a Calipers any day of the week. So we'll go over some of the braking stuff today and talk about what it is that makes up your braking system and what you can do to tune it or make it better for your bike. First thing everybody thinks of is brake pads. This is your typical set of centered pads right here. Most people's first question is, what's the difference between an organic and a centered pad? Now, there are a lot of different levels of centered pads and things like that, but we're just going to cover the basics. A centered pad it's made out of metal components. So it's things that are like metal powders that are literally melted together to make the braking surfaces. The good things about a centered pad is it's going to wear longer. It's going to stop. It's going to have a definite bite when you stop. It's going to perform better in wet conditions, things like that. Whereas an organic pad, this one right here, is made from non-asbestos materials that are held together with a resin. It's going to be a softer, a softer braking feel, and it's going to be softer on your rotors. Where if you have like a custom bike with polished rotors, you're not going to want to run a centered pad. You're going to want to run an organic pad that's going to be a lot easier on that braking surface. It is going to wear a little bit faster, and the organic pad will tend to wear under high heat conditions, like a lot of heavy braking, where the centered pad is going to dissipate that heat more. It's going to hold up under a lot of high heat conditions. So you can kind of tune your braking. If you don't want a lot of bite in your back brake, let's say, well, stay away from that centered pad. Go ahead and get the organic pad. It's going to have a softer feel, but it is going to create a little bit more brake dust. Organic pads are less noisy. Centered pads can be a little bit more squeaky. So onto the brake rotors that the pads are grabbing a hold of. This is your typical stainless steel solid rotor. So as far as like the hierarchy of rotors, this is the bottom rung. Good, solid. I mean, a lot of the bikes still today, they just come with a solid rotor. This is the cheapest one to manufacture. It's very workmanlike and will do the job, but nothing too flashy about it. It is drilled. That'll help dissipate heat more. And in braking, heat is basically everything. And as all braking products, you're going to see a lot of like racing runoff. So like years ago, all the street bikes came with solid steel rotors. The racing guys started drilling holes in there, dissipate heat. The brakes didn't fade as quickly. Now we have drilled. Everybody has some sort of drilled rotor on their bike. The next step up in rotors would be what they call a floating rotor. The reason this is called a floating rotor because you have your carrier in here with your braking surface out here, and it's being held together with these stainless steel buttons. And what this is supposed to do is as it heats up, this will find its own way basically inside the caliper and keep it centered so there's less drag. Most floating rotors are semi-floating rotors. A true floating rotor is like a race application. They're actually going to rattle. If I was shaking this like this, you'd hear it clack, 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 clack. But it's just not something suitable normally for street application. But a floating rotor is a definite upgrade. Some bikes from the factory come with them now. If you have to replace your rotor, this is a definite upgrade over the stock system. Better heat dissipation, better because it centers itself in the caliper. The next step up from that would be a wave rotor. The wave rotor still floats, but as you notice, it's got this wavy edge along the side of it. So what this does is a couple things. You get a better feel out of it because the leading edge of these waves, when they come through the caliper and it grabs, you get a little better feel. It bites on the leading edge of those, and it also, they found, cools off better. The little waves, as they come through the caliper, tend to push brake dust and air through there. So they actually will run a little cooler than your standard floating rotor. So this is good, better, best in braking world without getting into MotoGP super crazy finishes and materials. Brake fluid. Need to change your brake fluid probably once a year. Most people don't think about it, or at least bleed your brakes a few times a year to keep them good and stiff. We have dot 4 and dot 5. Dot 4, basic difference between dot 4 and dot 5 is that dot 4 will absorb moisture out of the air. So if you have your brake master cylinder reservoir open, it will absorb some of that moisture out of the air. Dot 5 will not do that. Now, if for some reason you have a leak or you do get a bunch of water absorption into dot 5, it will actually form kind of small water pockets in there. It won't absorb into the actual fluid. Another big difference is you really don't want to get dot 4 on your $1 paint job or your stock paint job because it's going to eat it, and it eats it pretty quickly. Whereas dot 5, a lot easier on the paint. The other big thing about dot 5 is since it won't absorb water, it takes its boiling point higher. So when under heavy braking and it's transferring heat into the lines and into the brake fluid, this holds up better under heat because it doesn't have that moisture in it that reacts with the heat. It's also worth noting not to mix dot 5 with any of their brake fluid. It isn't compatible with it and it will result in a big mess. On to some more higher end things like master cylinders. Front master cylinder and a rear master cylinder. These two here, very nice. I mean, right away, aesthetics. I mean, this is a really cool piece from PM. Craftsmanship is just through the roof. And just like you'd imagine, it's machined to a lot tighter tolerances than your stock reservoir. There again, you're gonna hear me say the word feel again. You're gonna get a lot better feel out of this. It's gonna, under heat, it's gonna hold tolerances better than your stock piece. And like I said, aesthetics-wise, this just doesn't get any better than this. And a lot of reservoirs with a lever on it offer some amount of adjustability too. So big upgrades here, but man, these are, you're getting into some really nice stuff, definitely worth the money. To the bottom end of the braking system now is calipers. Again, aftermarket calipers offer options that your stock calipers don't. Bigger pistons, need a better bite, more pistons. This is a 6-piston brake as opposed to some old bikes only having a 1-piston or a 2-piston. This is a 4, this is a 6. This one's actually a differential bore piston, which again helps dissipate heat. And the stock caliper isn't as well vented as an aftermarket caliper. So again, that heat's gonna stay in that stock caliper, whereas the aftermarket calipers, they're designed with bigger, better bite, more feel, better heat dispersion. If you're gonna go to the trouble of doing master cylinders and calipers and rotors and all that, or even if you're not, even if you're just changing brake pads, it's never a bad idea to do lines. This is a black line here. They make steel braided lines. The best part about these compared to your stock line is you're not gonna get that spongy feel because they're not gonna expand. The stock lines, they're gonna expand a little bit, especially when they get hot. When you're really getting on that brake, that line's gonna expand a little bit. It's gonna make that feel just a little spongier than what it is. Aftermarket lines, in addition to looking really cool, are gonna keep that sponginess out of the feel. It's gonna be a nice solid line that's gonna give you, good feedback all the way through the braking system. You'd hate to put a, really nice caliper on your bike and not have a nice line. You're gonna lose some of that performance out of the caliper by not adding the line. There are kits that are just bolt right on your bike that are set up already, or if you have custom applications, you can build your own with different size lines, different fittings with different angles, available for just about anything you'd want to build on the front or back of your bike. So if you like what you see here, you can subscribe to us, more videos like this. If you have any questions about any of the braking, you can get a hold of us on our Wayne100 number and talk to our text. They'd love to talk to you guys. You can get a hold of us via chat. As always, thank you for watching.